You know, there's usually a reason why I choose the songs that I choose before we get started, And in that song right there, it asks us, it says, who's going to ascend into his holy hill? And there's some stipulations there, right? All right. You got to have what? You got to have clean hands and a pure heart, right? You got to have two witnesses there. You got to have clean hands and a pure heart, right? And as we're going to read in our Parsha today, the children of Israel did not have that. Did they? They did not have clean hands. They did not have a pure heart. So the Father told him, he said, I'll tell you what, there's going to be a bunch of y'all that's going to end up out here. You ain't going to make it into the land, right? We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But it also says, in whose eyes a vile person is condemned. Did they condemn? No. The only one they wanted to condemn was Moshe. And he was the last one that they should have even thought about condemning, right? Because he had taken them out of their bad situation, right? Said that who else is going to be there? He who swears to his own hurt and changes not. Well, let me tell you what. They wasn't swearing to their own hurt. They was all, what's in it for me? Because we know about that, right? What'd they say last week? They said, where's the leeks and the onions and the fishes and all this stuff that we ate freely? Well, they were freely lying, wasn't it? They were freely telling a story is what they were doing. You see what I'm saying? They was looking through them rose-colored glasses. That's what we talked about last week, that nostalgia always looks good, when you're looking back on it. But when you go back to it, 99% of the time, it ain't so great. We just remember it a different way. You know what I mean? Because we was looking at it with a different set of eyes. But they sure wasn't hurt. They wasn't swearing to their own hurt. Because they were all about, gimme, 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 gimme. Give us bread. Give us meat. Give us this. Give us that. Nothing about, Father, what can we do for you to make it better? They sure wasn't doing that, were they? They wasn't putting themselves out at all. Okay? And the big one here, they all pretty big, but get this one right here, says that backbites not with his tongue. They was forever talking about somebody. Right? And what was they do? They was complaining against Yahweh's good headship and just constantly murmuring, complaining, mumbling, griping, grousing, whatever you want to call it. That's what they were doing. So that's the reason why I chose that song for today, because I want us to see if we, just like the Bible says, that all of these things were given to us as what? As examples of what not to do. All right? That's what an example is, right? You give an example of something, how it either should look or should not look. Right? At my work in the lab, we do a lot of bacterial and microbial testing. Well, we have two different sets of photographs up here that have been taken under microscopes. One set of what healthy, sterile sample, what they should look like. And over here we have what they should not look like. You see? So an example or an in sample, or, because both of those words are used, they're there to make sure, are we on the pattern or are we off the pattern? You see? So that's the reason why I want, because we're only going to make it to the city. We're only going to make it to be with him if we follow the pattern. So we can't be grumbling and mumbling and griping and complaining and all. It's like that. We always talk about, your light ain't shining if you're whining. You know what I'm saying? So we're not going to make it if we can't get out of our own heads and leave that stuff behind and say, you know what? It ain't all about me. That's something it's hard for us to realize, right? It ain't all about me. It's about him. It's about Israel. It's about his house. It's about what can I do to be what he wants me to be. That's what it's all about. So anyway, that's the reason why I wanted to give y'all a little background. That's why I chose that song today. Kind of give us an idea. What are we supposed to do? Right? We could have gone with you could do what you like or you could do what's right. Because it's the same type of thing, right? But I wanted some examples. So that's why we got this song today. So anyway, I'm so glad to have each and every one of you with us today. Thank you so much for being here, taking time. And especially thank you so much for honoring the Father's Day and being here with us as we honor and celebrate his day as well. You know, this is a special day. This is a feast we have every week, right? We're blessed above all people. We get to have a holiday, a feast day every week, right? And the Father loved us enough that he gave that to us. So anyway, our Parsha today is in Numbers 13 and 1, going through to 15 and 41. It's called Shlach. Some places you'll see Shlach Lecha, which means when you send. So anyway, this is going to be where we're going to talk about the spies and all kind of stuff today. We're going to talk about some good stuff. But anyway, Rebbitzin, if you would please read at least, I know we're going to need more, but if you could read at least 12 verses from the Torah Parsha, because we want to make sure that no tribe gets left behind.
Okay, and we're going to start in Numbers, and that's chapter 13, verse 1. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. Send one man from each tribe of their fathers, every one a leader among them. And by the command of Yahweh, Moshe sent them from the wilderness of Paran, all of them men who were heads of the children of Israel. And these were the names from the tribe of Reuben: Shammua, son of Zakur; from the tribe of Shimon, Shaphat, son of Hori; from the tribe of Yehuda, Caleb, son of Yephuni; from the tribe of Issachar, Yegal, son of Joseph; from the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, son of Nun; from the tribe of Benjamin, Palti, son of Raphua; from the tribe of Zebulun, Gidiel, son of Zodi; from the tribe of Joseph; from the tribe of Manasseh, Gadi, son of Sushi; from the tribe of Dan, Amiel, son of Gamali; from the tribe of Asher, Sethur, son of Michael; from the tribe of Naphtali, Nabi, son of Whoopsie; from the tribe of Gad, Geuel, son of Maki. These are the names of the men whom Moshe sent to spy out the land. And Moshe called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Yehoshua.
Abba Yahweh, we love you and appreciate you, Father. And we thank you so much for allowing us to be in your house today. Father, we just want you to know that we love you, and there's nothing that is on the forefront of our minds other than being a people that you can be proud of, being children that you can trust, being what you want us to be. Father, we just that's everything to us, is being able to do what you would have us to do and to be an example of what you would have us to be to this dark and dismal world that we all live in. Father, we thank you so much for the gift of your wonderful, wonderful son, Yahushua. We thank you for his saving blood and for his sacrifice. Abba, we also thank you for guiding us, leading us, directing us, keeping your hand on us all week long so that we could make it back here to your house today. And Father, we just ask that you would touch our hearts and our minds, that we would be able to receive the message that you would have for us today. Father, we ask that you would just continue to guide us and lead us. Father, I ask that you touch my mind and my mouth, that I may be able to bring the words that your people need today. Father, that you would just allow us the wherewithal, allow us to be overcomers, allow us to be able to find the strength to grow into the full stature of your son, Yahushua. And Father, we just ask that you, that your Ruach HaKodesh visit us today here in this house, because we're here for you and for nothing else. And we want you to know that we love you, we appreciate you, and we give you all the praise and all the glory in the name of your precious, precious son, Yahushua. Amen. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And Mom, I didn't purposely try to get you with these names because I know how you do about these names. Y'all, I love my mother, but she struggles with these names. It's a good thing we don't have to read anything out of Chronicles, huh? Because it'd be rough. But anyway, what we see here, let's go ahead and read verse 3 again.
And by the command of Yahweh, Moshe sent them from the wilderness of Paran, all of them men who were heads of the children of Israel.
Okay, so number one thing that we have to remember, we all want to do something for Yahweh, or at least we should, right? If we're here in his house and we're here on Shabbat, well, that means that we may be pretty serious about doing what we can for him. Well, here's the thing. These men that were put together into this troop of spies, if you will, where did their selection come from? Okay? It says here, and Moshe, did Moses choose them? It says that Moshe, by the commandment of Yahweh, sent them forth from the wilderness of Paran. So these were men that were chosen by Yahweh, right? And then it was given to Moshe, call these guys out. So what we need to realize here is that the selection of these men, whether for good or for bad, right? Let's think about that. The selection of these men was not done by Moshe, it was done by the Father. All right? Moshe didn't say, well, I like this guy from this tribe and this guy from... No. Those men were selected by the hand of Yahweh. So here's the thing that we have to know. Yahweh's in control, and he does whatever he needs to do to make his plan come forth, right? So here, he says, select these guys. This guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. Well, you got 12 tribes here, 12 guys chosen from among the heads, the princes of the houses. But what do we see? Only two of them out of the 12 come back with a good report. Okay? And that's what we have to remember. Yahweh chooses who he will to further his plan. There's a lot of times in the scriptures you say, why in the world would this happen or that happen? Well, everything. Dad said it several times. Yahweh is a master chess player. He's better than Big Blue or Gary Kasparov or any of those guys, right? Because he knows the strategy. And Yahweh moves pieces in order to make his strategy come into fruition. Who's to say if anything had been any different, right? Then it would have thrown off the timeline for Yahushua to come and to begin his earthly ministry. Okay? So the Father has a plan. And even when it looks like everything's kind of higgledy-piggledy, we have to remember that it's all in his time. Amen? We talk about that in Ecclesiastes a lot, don't we? That there's a time and a purpose to everything under heaven, right? And he does things in, as Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, that he does everything according to Shane's time. Or he does everything according to Matityahu's time. No, he does everything according to his time. He makes all things beautiful in his time, right? And that's what we have to remember. Dad spoke about it last night. They used to call it the microwave generation, right? But now we're like the nanosecond. We're used to every instant gratification, all right? We want everything. I want it now. I want it yesterday. You know what I mean? That's right. You ain't even got to call a special phone number. But, I mean, we want everything the way we want it, and we want it instantaneously. But that's not the way that the Father works. He works according to his timeline, right? They were in Egypt 430 years. Why did he wait so long? Because he told Abraham, he said, your people are going to be in this land that is not theirs, and they're going to be in there for a certain amount of time, right? But the scriptures say that it was the self same day that they went in 430 years later, they come out. You see what I'm telling you? It's in his time. And let me tell you something about Israel. They're not very well known for their patience. Hey, I'm giving revelations up here. Y'all didn't know this. Y'all didn't know this before, but they're not given to patience, okay? Israel is not given to patience. They never have been, right? It always say that you can take the people out of Israel or out of Egypt, but you can't get Egypt out of the people. You can take Israel out of Egypt, but you can't get Egypt out of Israel. And that's sad. But unfortunately, that's how it is. And again, going back to what I said earlier, that's why the scriptures tell us that we were given all these things as examples of what not to do. This is what they did. Don't do this. This is what got them in trouble. This was what brought plagues. This is what brought the enemies. This is what brought sickness. This is what brought leprosy. These are things that they did. So yeah, it's exactly right. We got two ways. There's two sets of two ways of how the Father deals with things, right? First of all, he will either deal with, if there's a problem, he can either deal with it privately or publicly. I personally would rather have him deal with it privately because I don't want my business out there on Front Street, especially if I'm messing up. You know what I'm saying? I don't want my business out there. So bless Yahweh, he gives us the opportunity to get it right, without it being everybody's common knowledge. Second of all, he allows us to learn one of two different ways, either by theory or in practice, right? It would have been so much better for them if they had learned by theory, because then they wouldn't have had to live through the situation. They wouldn't have had to live through the Amalekites and the Ammonites and all of them ites. They wouldn't have to learn through the burning serpents. They wouldn't have had to learn through the plague, right? They wouldn't have had to learn through, death in the camp and all. They wouldn't have had to learn that way if they had just taken his lessons and applied them in a theoretical sense. Okay? So it's kind of like, Yahushua taught, and he taught in parables, right? So he did that in order to what? To kind of make them think, make them dig. He'd tell them a story and say, hey, this happened. But then again, what did they always come back and say, can you tell us what you meant by the parable? We don't understand it. We don't get it. And we're blessed today that we have a better understanding, But again, we got to understand every one of us has been given something by the Father. At least one thing. So no matter what he's given you, do that thing with all of your might for him, right? Don't do it to try and be better than this one or try to top that one or I make this better than so-and-so. How come I'm not in charge? Or when? I mean, we've had that stuff happen. You hear people say, well, I'm not going back there because they didn't like my casserole or whatever. Yeah, they didn't like my chili. They didn't like my chili I made. I didn't win the first prize. So that just means that it wasn't preferred by people. You know what I mean? But that don't mean stop doing what you do. Right? Scriptures tell us that those who compare themselves amongst themselves are not wise. So if I spend all my time comparing myself to Brother Michael is a fantastic handyman and carpenter and all kinds of, he does amazing work. I, on the other hand, am not blessed that way. And I will be the first one to tell you. I'm a good electrician. Okay? I think I'm a pretty doggone good electrician. I've lived all this time. I've been doing electricity since high school. Okay? And I have worked in some factories and I've been put in some situations, getting up on power poles and every other kind of thing. But I'm still alive. So I'm a pretty good electrician, But if I spend my time comparing myself to Brother Michael, here's why I'm not wise. Y'all want to hear this? I got a new revelation for you. Here's why I'm not wise. This is why the Bible tells us this. Because if I spend all my time comparing myself to Brother Michael, then my eyes are on Brother Michael and not on Yahushua. Do you see? That's why he said those who compare themselves amongst themselves are not wise. There is only one that we should be comparing ourselves to. And that is the Son of the living Elohim. Because we're called to do what? To grow and to become like him and to grow into the full stature of the Son of Elohim. That's who I should be comparing myself to. Dad's gift and my gift are not the same. Does that mean that I should not ascribe to doing better? No, that doesn't mean that at all. I should always want to do better. But I can't live up to Dad's gift. Does this make sense to anybody? So that's why I don't compare myself to Dad. I'll be the first one to tell you, and y'all know it, we teach differently. Dad has his style, I have mine. But does it mean that either one is better than the other? No. It still accomplishes the same thing. Right? Or it should be, which is bringing people to Yahushua, helping them to see, not dragging them away. I'm not trying to gain a bunch of followers for Brother Shane. That would be foolish. That would be a silly thing. I'm not doing that because that's not what I'm called to do. Right? Dad doesn't, and I believe he'd say the same thing, he doesn't have the talent that I have for the language. But I don't have the talent that Dad has to recall the scriptures, what we call his computer, right? I don't have that talent. I wish I did, right? I wish I was able to say, oh, well, yeah, let's just go to John such and such. Blah, blah. I wish I could do that. But I'm not wired that way. You see? But it doesn't matter. I'm not to compare myself to him in a kind of a sense of being envious or anything like that. Can I say, boy, I sure wish I had that computer like Dad had? Yeah, I can say that. And that's not a bad thing. Right? But I'm not going to say, oh, well, and that just becomes my whole purpose. Amen? Because like I said, if I'm constantly comparing myself to somebody else, I've got my eyes on them and I don't have my eyes on him. You see? So that's why we're not supposed to do that. But they was constantly comparing themselves to, oh, well, these people have this, and these people, oh, did he bring us out here to die because there were no graves in Egypt? And this man, he done this and he done that, blah, 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 blah. And we ain't got it like these people. Stop. Stop worrying about that. We've got what we've got. Guess what we do have? We've got his son. We've got his word. What more do we need? I asked this body, what more do we need? Right? He's all we need. And he gives us what we can handle when we can handle it. If that makes any sense to anybody. I know what I'm trying to say. There's a reason why I'm not a multimillionaire. Because I couldn't handle that. I'm being honest. I know me better than anybody. I couldn't handle all that. I couldn't. I'd be like these people you see at the win the lotto. You know what I mean? Went crazy. So he ain't give me that. First of all, I guess I'd have to play the lotto, first of all. You know, which I don't. But my point is, he's got me where he has me for a reason. And we got food in the cabinet. And we got a full refrigerator. And we got a roof over our heads. And we got vehicles that we can drive. Right? We're in a pretty good place. We are blessed. So, what more do we need? So, like I said, he chooses who he wants for his own purpose. So don't get your tail feathers in a knot because you ain't doing this or you ain't doing that. If it's for you to do, he will make a way for it to happen and he will select you. Too many people out there that are self-appointed and self-anointed, right? Too many people like that. We knew too many people that way. Oh, I'm the great Bible scholar so-and-so. Are you? You ain't even got down the fact that you ain't supposed to be here on Sunday. You're supposed to be here on Saturday. So how are you the great Bible scholar? You feel me? So verses 4 through 15, Mom, I'm not going to ask you to read them. But verses 4 through 15, it talks about these tribes, right? And it says from this tribe, this one, from this tribe, this one. And it goes through. And you know what? The best part is it actually lists 12 tribes. Not one, not two. It doesn't say, oh, this guy was under the banner of Judah. And this guy was under. It doesn't say that. Right? Because that doesn't match the pattern. Right. Because we see in the city, how many gates are there? There's 12 gates. And how many foundations? 12. And how many, like I said, well, didn't I say that? Yeah, I mean, how many gates, how many apostles, how many fathers, how many, it says that there's 420 elders. That's 12 times 2. Right? There were how many names on the breastplate or on the shoulders of the high priest? 12. There were how many stones in the high priest's breastplate? Not in Hasatan's breastplate, but yes, ma'am.
What do you mean by Hashatan's?
Hasatan had a breastplate as well.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. But it only had 9 stones in it. Okay, because he is an imitator, he is a duplicator, but he's not the original. You know what I'm saying? The Father is the creator. Hasatan is not. He is a pale imitation. Yeah, a disgruntled ex-employee. That's what we call it. Okay? But like I said, there were 12 stones in the breastplate. Okay? So that number 12 tells us in the book of Isaiah that the government will be where? On his shoulders. So you see, it's got to be all 12 tribes. Now, later on, it's been distilled down to 2 houses, the house of Judah and the house of Ephraim, right? But there are still 12 tribes. Just because a tribe joined another tribe does not mean that they lost their autonomy. Y'all get what I'm trying to say? So we see that all of these tribes were important. They were all being sent to do a job. Scriptures say that Yahweh so loved the world. Not that he only liked this tribe or that tribe, or that he didn't like these people over here or over there. He didn't say that, right? So like it says here that all 12 tribes were sent to go do this job. Everybody's got a job to do. Okay? But here's something that I do want you to pay attention to. Verse 6. Now, Rebbiton, I'm going to ask you to read verse 6 for me. And verse 8. I want to take a look at 2 very special folks here.
Okay. 13 and 6. From the tribe of Yehuda, Caleb, the son of Yefunni.
All right. And then verse 8.
From the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, the son of Nun.
Okay, so from the tribe of Judah was a fella named Caleb. All right? Caleb, that was his name. Now, he was actually a Kenizzite. He was a Hebrew. Okay? Because he had crossed over out of darkness and joined himself to a tribe. What does the name Hebrew, Ivri, what does that mean? Crossed over. That's why they called Abraham a Hebrew and not a Jew. Get that now. All right? You don't have to be a Jew. Scriptures say that there are some who say they are Jews and are not. And these are people with actual blood in their veins. Huh? But it's never been about the Jew. It's always been about Israel as a whole. Okay? But like I said, Caleb, he was not originally from the tribe of Judah, but he did just like what they were told, right? He joined himself. Him and his father, they joined themselves to that house. He underwent the physical aspects of it. That's part of it, right? And then you got to follow the law, right? You got to follow the rules. We're going to talk about that word law. There's one thing that really goads me is when people use the word law to explain the Torah. And we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to explain to you why that bothers me. Okay? But the word Caleb, anybody know what that means? Mom, I know you do. Okay, but what does it mean? A Caleb is a dog. Okay, it's a dog. Yeah, a Caleb is a dog. I had some Jewish friends growing up, and their dog's name was Caleb. They were just calling the dog. But a Caleb is a dog. Now, it also has some unsavory connotations to it as well. Okay? Like what it talks about, don't bring the price of a dog. Well, but remember, these were not, right? They were from another group, shall we say, the Kenizzites. However, one thing about a dog is that it has a personality, right, that everybody equates with a canine, and that is the fact that they are faithful and they're loyal, right? And then who are we talking about? So keep that in the back of your mind. So when we talk about verse 8, who are we talking about? Hoshea, right? Which we know later on he gets his name changed to Joshua, right? But Hoshea, what does that mean? That means deliverer. So we see the promise when we go and face our fears. They were given a job to do. They were to go into the land and spy it out. And Caleb and Hoshea are the only ones who came back with a good report, right? Why could they have a good report and nobody else brought one? Because that was a promise through their names, right? This is what, if you study Judaism, there's two ways to walk the scriptures out. Halakha, which is, what does it say? And then you have Agadah, which is like, what's the spirit of it? What's the interpretation? Well, here we see that the reason why they could give a good report, because when you combine their names, we see that the promise, the Father had already made them a promise that there was a faithful deliverer coming. So it didn't matter if it was the sons of Anak. It didn't matter if the Anakim were there. It didn't matter whether they looked like grasshoppers. Who did they look like grasshoppers to? Themselves. Right? I've got it on good authority that the Anakim were afraid of the Israelites because they knew what their Elohim could do. Caleb and them are saying, we could go in there and just walk away with this thing. Oh, no. The ground there eats up the inhabitants. The cities are walled up to heaven. We're, guys, do you not remember what happened out in the wilderness? Do you not remember the Red Sea? Do you not remember the quail and the manna and do you not remember any of that? They have shortest attention span. They got attention span like a goldfish. You know what I mean? They got the shortest attention span I've ever known in my life. Let's go, because there was a promise was already made, right? Let's go to Deuteronomy 18. Look at verses 15 and verses 18. They both kind of say the same exact thing, just one is worded a little differently than the other. Okay, Deuteronomy 18, we're going to go read verse 15, and then I want us to read verse 18. Okay?
Yahweh your Elohim will rise up for you a prophet like me from among your own brothers. You must listen to him.
So go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, verse 18 says, I will rise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers. I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them everything I command him.
So there's already been the promise of a faithful deliverer or redeemer, right? The Father delivered them faithfully like he said that he would, right? So you have the Father delivering them from Egypt, but guess what? He was going to send another deliverer that was going to deliver us out of our sin and out of our fallen state and allow us to walk close to him. And we know that was who? His son Yahushua, right? The Lion of the tribe of Judah. So you see, this all follows the pattern. Every bit of it. All right? And then we see in verse 16, where Hoshea, the son of Nun, right? The tribe of Ephraim, he gets a new name. Right? Isn't it interesting whenever people get a new name in the scriptures, they always get the letter Hey added into their name? Isn't that incredible? Why is that? Because when we look at the letter Hey, it is symbolic of the Ruach, right? It's symbolic of the Father's Spirit. It's something wondrous that we can't explain. That's why in the Proto-Sinaitic, what's the picture that we see? A little guy with his hands up in the air. Maybe he's been listening to your lessons, Rebbe, who knows? But he's saying, hands up. It's because he's so shocked because he's seen something so wonderful, something unexplainable, something unimaginable. those who sat in darkness have seen what? A great light. Okay? Abram becomes Avraham through the addition of the hay. Sarai becomes Sarah. Right? Osher becomes Yehoshua. Do you see when the name changes happen, the hay, and that's symbolic of his spirit being put into them. But without his spirit, I think the scriptures is trying to tell us we can do all the things we could give to every charity. We could give of our time. We could give ourselves up to be burned or to be killed or sacrificed. But the scriptures tell us if we don't have love, what does it profit us? Nothing, right? If we don't have the Father's Spirit in us, it doesn't matter what we do. We can rack up all the merit that there is in the world. Right? Because the scriptures tell us that faith without works is dead, being alone. And guess what? It works the same. I can't just rely on all my works to get me in, because that ain't going to do it. I got to have his spirit in me as well. Right? Scriptures say that there's no way to the Father but through the Son. So, do you see what I'm trying to tell us here? We got to be on board with him. We got to be following the pattern. We got to have him in us. We got to, you know what I mean? That's what I was trying to tell us earlier. We got to be looking like his son, or he's not going to come inhabit this vessel. So like I said, we see that there's been times when the Father saw fit to change a person's name. Because your name is what? 4 things: nature, character, power, and authority. All right? Those 4 things: nature, character, power, and authority. What better thing to have? What better nature to have than the Spirit of Yahweh? What better character to have than the Spirit of Yahweh? What better power to have than the Spirit of Yahweh? What better authority to have than the Spirit of Yahweh? What did they say about Yahushua? He teaches as one with authority. But they were so surprised because he didn't know letters. How does he teach not knowing letters? He ain't been to Hillel. He ain't been to Shammai. He ain't got to. He's the one that wrote the book. But the point is, what better to have added into your name? That's how he changes us, right? He changes us or he should, from the inside out. We got to we got to get changed on the inside before we get changed on the outside. You know what I mean? That's how we get drawn to him. All right? So then verses 17 through 20, they kind of receive their orders, for lack of a better term. And so the thing is, though, what are we going to do when we get our orders? Are we going to do like them? We're going to get scared? We're going to sit down? I don't know about it. I don't know if I want to do that, you know? Or are we going to say, yes, sir? Right? So we've always talked about this. When he does come back and we ask him, what do we do? And he says, all right, in a week, on Thursday, is going to be, we're going to start Feast of Tabernacles. Are we going to argue with him about the calendar? No. Or the zenith, or the apex, or the, what do they call that? What is it? The conjuncture, or any of that? Are we going to argue with him about that? I don't think so. If you are, guess where you're going to be? You're going to be outside the camp. Because he's going to be in it, right? Yeah. Well, I tell you what. Let me be inside the camp. Yeah. So if he says it's going to be such and such a day at such and such a time, I'm going to be there with bells on. And I'm not going to argue. Well, I looked at the calendar and the calendar said, I don't care what the calendar says. If he said it, that's what I'm going to do. But you laughing about back there, Sister Santana. I see you. They do. They argue so much. You know, Sister Santana was saying that she was just thinking about how people argue about things. You know, but when it comes down to him, we're not going to be able to argue because he speaks with all the authority of the Father. Amen? So you can't argue. And I don't care how big your head is and how much you think you know. All right? So, like I said, they get their orders and they're told, go do this and bring back a report and tell me, tell us so we know what to do next. So these guys get sent out. But where are the rest of them? Where's the rest of them? They're back in the camp. And what are they doing? They're waiting. Right? Because when we're resting, Yahweh is working. And when we're working, Yahweh is resting. That's why when we go to messing with something, it's going to come out messed up most of the time because he ain't in it. So these guys are supposed to be going out to do what they're supposed to do. and the people are resting. So the Abba is doing what? He's working on their behalf through the spies. Do y'all understand what I'm telling you here? You see the concepts? You see the pattern? Okay? So the scriptures say that they went up and they surveyed the land from Zin all the way to Rehob. They come to Hamath, right? They ascended into the side, and it gives the whole track that they took. But verse 25, well, it tells us that they came to this brook called Eshcol. Why do they call it Eshcol? Because of this great big cluster of grapes that they had a pole in between of them. And they were having to carry that cluster of grapes on a pole. It was so big. And that's what the word Eshcol means, a cluster, right? They were very creative in naming places. They named it after what they saw there. Okay. So it says here that they bore it between two upon a staff, and they brought of the pomegranates and of the figs. So if the grapes were that big, can you imagine how big the pomegranates and the figs were? They must have been pretty good size. And they bring all of this stuff back. And how long had they been gone? 40 days. Which is a picture of what? Testing. What were they going to do when they came back? What was the report they were? Do you see? The scriptures talk about if somebody comes and tells you something, right? What do we got to do? We need to weigh it against. It says test the spirits, right? Okay? We've got to weigh it against the word. We've got to weigh it against his Torah. Because if we don't, we can be pulled off to the left or to the right. Okay? So that 40 days that they're out there, he's testing them. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? And there ain't but two of them that pass the whole test. Right? The other ones go out, so they pass that part of it. But when they come back, they bring, they got proof. I mean, they're bringing the stuff. He told him, he said, I'm giving you a land that flows with milk and honey. All you got to do is go and get it. But their earthly eyes saw giants in the land. And we got giants in our lives too. But let me tell you something. When you are marching under the banner of Yahweh Almighty, when you are marching under the banner of Yahweh El Shaddai, when you are marching under his flag, all right, it's just like what the other two said. We are well able. All right, I don't care how big the giant is in your life. If Yahweh is for you, who can be against you? I face some giants in my life. I face giants every week. We all do, I think. If you ain't got no giants in your life, guess what? You ain't. You better kind of take a look at the map you're using. You know what I'm saying? Are you walking where you're supposed to? Devil ain't gonna bring nothing into your life if you're already going to the places he wants you to go. Well, then what do he's already got you. But that's what I'm saying. Don't look at that giant as an obstacle. Don't look at that giant as, all right, you look at it as something that you can overcome. Because he told us, to those that overcome, I'll give all things. To him that overcomes, I will do what? I give him the power to be my son. To him that overcomes, I give this. He'll give us all things. Give you a white stone with a new name in it. All that kind of stuff. All right? But we got to overcome the giants. But if there's nothing to overcome, how can you be an overcomer? I mean, honestly, let's think about it. How can I overcome if there's no obstacle in my way? A lot of people like to also blame themselves when a giant shows up in their life. Okay? Don't look at those giants as a failure. Look at those giants as a way to improve. If I overcome this, I got that under my belt. I made it this far. And the more you overcome, the easier it becomes for you to overcome. Because you can think back and say, you know what? He didn't leave me when I was here. He didn't leave me when my heart was broken. He didn't leave me when I had $2 in my pocket and that's all I had. He didn't leave me when I didn't have anything. In fact, that's when I felt him the closest. Right? Sometimes we need to get to that lowest point in order for him to be able to lift us up. I wish somebody would hear me right now. I'm telling you, we got to be in those. That's where he tests us at. The test doesn't come when you're standing on the top of the mountain. It comes when you're down in the valley. And when you're at your lowest point, that's when he can show up and show out. Okay? So if that's where you're at, hey, put them hands up. Bless Yahweh, because he cares enough to put you in that situation. Scripture says he does it, why? To test you, to see whether you love him or not. That's why he puts us there. Right? So accept it. Father, I thank you for allowing me to be tested. If he didn't care about you, what does the scripture say? That what natural father doesn't discipline their children? Right? So that we've been disciplined of our earthly fathers. Right? And he loves us. If he doesn't discipline us, what's that mean? He don't care. It means that you're an illegitimate child and he don't care about you. But he loved you enough to send his only begotten. So guess what? We're going to have some hardships and some trials. Okay? We're going to have some hardships and some trials. But those hardships and trials are what form us and mold us and shape us into the thing that he wants us to be. What did Yahushua say in the garden? Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, your will be done. So if he sends something your way, right, embrace it. Father, you love me enough that you allowing me to be tested. Thank you. Because remember what it says in the Psalms, right? It says that weeping may endure for the night, but joy is going to come in the morning. So welcome that. Welcome that. All right? Don't you know that they was being tested out there? They were seeing the Anakim, the giants, right? The people that were the offspring of angels and earthly women. They were seeing all these things, and they were terrified. But they needed to remember, just like David said, "I look to the hills from whence cometh my help." He should have known. He's brought us this far, right? He's not going to drop us. He's not going to leave us. He said he'll never leave us, never forsake us. What are we worried about? Just like Caleb said, we are well able to take the land. Well, like I said, you're well able to handle that thing that's come against you. That hurt, right? Whatever it is. Mental, physical, financial, whatever it is, you're well able to overcome that. You just got to remember where your help's coming from. Yahushua was tempted of Hasatan how long? 40 days. Moshe went up into the mountain how long? 40 days. What did he tell him? He said, I'm going to put you in the desert a year for every day. How long were they in the desert? 40 years. Do you see the pattern? That's why I tell y'all the pattern is the most powerful tool that you have to study Scripture and study it correctly, to rightly divide the word of truth from error. Okay? So Messiah was tempted. Moshe was, when he come down, he didn't see what he wanted to see, did he, Rebbe? No, he did not. Okay. In verses 26 and 27, says here that, Mom, you want to go ahead and read 26 and 27? Y'all, I'm feeling kind of fired up today, y'all.
And they went and they came to Moshe and Aharon and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. And they brought back word to them, to all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. And they reported to him and said, we went to the land where you sent us, and truly it flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit.
So guess what? What did they do? They brought back irrefutable evidence, proof. They could set their eyes on it. They could touch it. They could taste it if they wanted to. It wasn't like they ran down to the party store and bought some novelty grapes and hung off of a pole. You know what I'm saying? They could have tasted. They could see it, smell it, touch it, taste it. They had irrevocable proof that it was exactly what Yahweh had told them. So, how many times do we have proof that the Father has performed a great work in our lives? How many times do we see his great works? How many times do we read about the things he's done? How many times do we, it's like you've heard people say, how many burning bushes do you need? Moshe only needed one. So how many, why do we have to have 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 or whatever? Why do we need that? We have proof, right? Yet, and I'm going to phrase this very carefully, we choose to believe our eyes. And we choose to deceive ourselves. Rebbe, has the Father ever lied to you? Sister Alicia, has the Father ever lied to you? He took you out of a situation, right? And brought you out, took you out of darkness, brought you into a marvelous light, a great light. Okay? Sister Armindia, has the Father ever lied to you? Sister Nicola, has he ever lied to you? Well, guess what? I got news for you. He won't. He can't. He is incapable of lying to you. So if there is proof, why can't we believe it? Because we're too busy not seeing that we were made in his image, but we're trying to conform him to ours. Amen. If I can't do it, then nobody can. Let's keep it 100, okay? If I can't do it, then it can't be done. I'm tickled that you think that much about yourself. But the scriptures tell me that you're wrong. The scriptures tell me that you are wrong. There is one who can do anything. And guess what? He don't need your or my permission to do it. Or our help, thank you. I'm talking to somebody here, and I want to make sure you know. All right? He's got you. You heard somebody tell you that? I got you. I got your back. He's got you. And if the Father's got you, guess what? You in better hands than with Allstate. Hello? If the Father's got you, man, you can storm the gates of West Hell with a water gun. You be all right. Okay? I'm telling you, he's got it under control. So let him take care of it. I tell us that a lot, but I think that that's something that we need to know. A lot of times it's easy. We fall back. We fall back, right? And we say, oh man, I'm in this situation. And then he brings us out of it, and we're happy, and it's all good. Everything's hunky-dory. And then guess what? We find ourselves back in the same situation. But that's in our nature. We're going to talk about that here in just a few minutes. Because we see the pattern here. I cannot stress to you, thanks to Dad's efforts, I play the bass pretty decent. I'm not great, but I can at least make some music. Okay? But my part of what you hear on the CDs and all that stuff, what is my job as the bassist? It is to keep time with the drums. So what am I looking for? I have to look for patterns in the drum playing to keep time for the rest of the group. That's what a bass player does. You see? And that's how my brain works. Even before Dad taught me, I'm always looking for, maybe it's a little OCD, I don't know, but I'm always looking for patterns in things. That's what makes sense to me. Patterns make sense to me. So that's what I always look for. Let's go verses 28 through 31.
But the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are walled, very great. And we saw the descendants of Anak there too. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negev, while the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell in the sea and all along the banks of the Jordan. And Caleb silenced the people before Moshe and said, let's go up at once and take possession, for we're certainly able to overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we're not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we.
Okay, so you see, They chose to listen to the voice of the majority other than the voice of reason, the voice of faith, right? Caleb says, nonsense. Let's go. We can do this. If y'all was for us, who can be against us? Right? But they chose to look through the eyes of man instead of looking through the eyes of faith. Faith is a funny thing. In Hebraic thought, the word faith, it's the word emunah. All right? Emunah, faith. The thing is, emunah ends with the letter hey. So, that tells you right there, just grammatically, that faith is not a noun, it is a verb. It has action tied to it. Faith is not something you have, it's something you do. It is an action, right? So, I can have faith, but it doesn't really count for anything until I put it into action. That's the Hebraic mindset, right? What did it say in the book of James? Show me your faith without works, and I'll show you my faith by my works. So that means I'm doing what? I am performing an action. But the church don't know about that. They think they can just sit back and twiddle their thumbs. Oh, I've got faith. I've got faith. I tell you, you can have all the faith in the world. Scriptures say that the devils hear and tremble. Even the devils believe. So if you're just going to sit back on your laurels and twiddle your thumbs, on, sitting there on your faith, well, guess what? You ain't no better than the devil. I said it, and I say it again. You ain't no better than the devil. What did he tell him? He told him, he said, you're of your father, the devil. Okay? Because they were relying strictly on their works and not their faith. You got to have both, right? You got to have how many witnesses? 2 or 3. But in this case, we're talking about 2. I got to have faith and I got to have my works. Okay? But the thing is, let's go to 1 Corinthians 1, 24 through 28. I may run just a little long this morning. I'm worked up. I'm worked up. I can feel him all over me. I got stuff I got to say.
All right, 1 Corinthians 1, 24 through 28. But unto them which are called, both Jews and Greeks, the Messiah is the power of Yahweh and the wisdom of Yahweh. Because the foolishness of Yahweh is wiser than men, and the weakness of Yahweh is stronger than men. For you see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But Yahweh hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and Yahweh hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty, and base things of the world, and things which are despised, hath Yahweh chosen, yea, and things which are not, to bring to naught things that are.
That's my favorite part of that. Things that are nothing, to bring to nothing things that are. That's what these other 10 spies were looking at. They were looking at, oh my gosh, these cities are walled up and the land devours the inhabitants and there's giants and the da-da-da-da-da. That's what they were seeing. They were looking to the left or to the right. They was like Peter. Amen? They was looking at the peripheral things instead of keeping their eyes on the prize. Father said, go in, take the land. It's going to be good. But the problem is they couldn't step outside of their fear in order to receive the promise. Okay? They couldn't become overcomers. They couldn't overcome the situation because they allowed themselves, or they did not allow themselves to see the one that was walking with them. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that this falls in the
She's got-
pattern of Gideon with his army that had to be reduced because Yahweh?
Same type of thing. Because he had 30,000 men at the beginning. Yahweh said that's too many. Then he had what? He had 3,000. Yahweh said that's still too many. So he knocks him down to 300 people against an army of thousands. But what did Yahweh say? If I'm not mistaken, it says, if you go in there with that many, I'm not going to get the glory from it. You feel me? That was it. That was the test. That was the hurdle. That when I talked about having giants in your life, he puts those giants there so we have something to overcome. And then, the next giant that we face doesn't look as big as the first one did. And when we defeat that one, guess what? The next giant ain't so big. And we've got this. As we go along, here's your giant right here. Here's you. But as we go along, it's like, and pretty soon we're overlooking the problem and we're like, I got this. I got Yahweh with me. I got the blood of his son. If Yahweh be for us, who can be against us? I got that tattooed on my heart. You know what I'm saying? I'm on my way. I don't mean tattooed physically, okay, because we ain't supposed to do that. But what I'm saying is, I've got it written there, right? Thank you, Dad. That's a much better word. I've got it written there. And I know. That's why we have the ashes, right? That's why we have our past experiences. He brought me through this and this and this and this. What did David say when he faced Goliath? He said, one time I was out in the field and there was a lion and a bear. And what did he do? He said, I killed the bear and I grabbed the lion by his beard and I killed him with my sword and I took my sheep back. Don't you know that he said, I lived through that? And this is a young man now. Remember, scripture say he was but a ruddy youth. So he was a young fella. Okay. And we know it took a while for him to ascend to the throne. So I'm thinking he's probably in his late teens, mid to late teens. But he said, I already killed a lion and a bear. And he said, now this uncircumcised Philistine is going to be just like one of them. He already knew that he had won because the Father had brought him through the battle before. This is what I'm trying to tell us. It doesn't matter how big the giant is. He's brought you through it once. He'll bring you through it again. They didn't see that. He brought them out of Egypt. He fed them. Right? He did miracles for them. It's just like it said in the last Parsha. They were sitting here crying about who's going to give us meat to eat. What's the Bible say? Said that he caused a mighty wind. And where did it bring? Hey, here's another thing. This is one of my favorite things. You can go look in Genesis 1 and 20 if you don't believe me. But it says here that he brought the quail from where? From the sea. From the sea. Genesis 1 and 20 says that he created the fish in the sea, right? It says that he created, Mom, why don't you go ahead and read that? I don't want to get this out of context. Genesis 1 and 20. I got in an argument about this with a fellow one time.
And Elohim said,
But I said, I'm going to die on this hill because this is my father. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
and Elohim said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creatures that have life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven.
So, how did he create? He said he created him for a day and a half in all directions, right? So how did he create him? He made him out of the water. You can argue with the man that wrote the book. Don't argue with me. That's how he fed 600 and something thousand men of war besides women and children. That's how he did it. Because nothing is impossible with Yahweh. So if he can feed them, if he can give them the same food that angels eat, if he can get them a rock that follows them around that's spitting out fresh water all the time, don't you think he can help you overcome your obstacle? Would you agree with that, Ribby? He can make it happen, whether we believe it or not. But that reminds me of that in I believe it's in Psalms where he said, I may be wrong, Dad, you correct me if I am, but he said, help my disbelief or unbelief. Unbelief, disbelief, it's the same thing. Okay? Help thou my unbelief. Well, it's wherever it is. I'm just saying, we need to get that under control. We need to get that under control. Like I said, my computer don't work the same way Dad's does, but I know it's there. That's why I have to rely on Dad to give me the right places, but I know it's there. And the concept is the same, whether it's in the old or the new. Okay? The same exact thing. All right? So that's what I'm saying. They couldn't let go of. Yes, sis.
Yeah, you said it say in the scripture, help my unbelief. That's for the people that don't believe.
That's for anybody who has a doubt.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay? It's when doubt arises. When I look at a situation and I say, whew, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this one. How am I going to make it through? That's when I need him to help my unbelief. Okay? And then verses 32 and 33. Yeah, please.
Okay, starting in verse 32. And they gave the children of Israel an evil report of the land which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land eating up its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great size. And we saw there the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, of the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we were in their eyes.
Okay, in our own sight. So we limited what the Father could do. We tied his hands. I'm going to give you a news flash here. Did you know that you can tie the Father's hands? Sure you can. Father can do anything, right? But you can stop him from doing it. Okay? So that's the thing. They said in our own eyes, we were as grasshoppers. So they had already tied his hands. So they weren't going to defeat him anyway, because their fear had gotten the better of them. Fear is not of Yahweh. There's a healthy fear. I'm not going to go climb into the tiger pen at the zoo, even though they don't have a tiger in there right now, I don't think. I'm not going to get in the jaguar pen. I know they got one of them. Okay? That's a respect. Somebody asked me one time when I used to work in the plywood mill, aren't you afraid of electricity? No. I'm not afraid of it, but I have a healthy respect for it. I know what it can do. I've seen it. I've seen arc flashes. I've been part of it. You know what I'm saying? I've seen it. But bless Yahweh, I'm here today. And I have a healthy respect for it. I'm not going to do anything if I'm making sure everything's locked out, tagged out, all that before I work on anything. All right? So my question is, how is it that we're so ready to believe what we see versus what the Father has promised? He brought them out, brought them through, destroyed the armies of Pharaoh, fed them. Give them water out of a rock, bread from heaven, all this kind. Yeah, their clothes didn't wear out, their shoes didn't wear out, right? For 40 years, they wore the same shoes, same clothes. That's what I'm saying. If you'd been a little kid and you'd been Adriel, and then by the time you got to the promised land, you was 40-something years old. But you was wearing the same shoe. So little is much when the Father is in it. So, like I said, let's quit trying to let's quit trying to rationalize everything. Let's quit trying to make it make sense to us. The Father doesn't make sense to us. He doesn't have to. I'm going to tell you something that I believe my entire life. He doesn't have to make sense to me because he's sovereign. Amen? One thing that he'll never do, though, he'll never go against what his word says. Right? He says, I'm Yahweh, I change not. Therefore, you sons of Jacob are not consumed, okay? That's the only reason why we're alive today is because he does not change. All right, so we left off at the end of chapter 13. We're going to start back in chapter 14. Rebbitzin, if you would, could you read verses 1 through 3, please?
All right. Numbers chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel grumbled against Moshe and against Aaron. And all the congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Mitzrayim, or if only we had died in this wilderness. And why is Yahweh bringing us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should become prey? Would it not be better for us to return back to Mitzrayim?
So here's how we talk ourselves into situations. You remember what we talked about earlier? We talked about nostalgia. We talked about rose-colored glasses. Well, let me tell you what, nostalgia is not always what it's cracked up to be. We do remember things being one way. But then if we go back and we revisit it, guess what? It's never as good as what we remember it being. And you know, the thing is, when you think about all of the stuff that the Father did for them, right? The place he brought them from, the lives that they had to live, the taskmaster, what the scriptures call the harsh rigor that they had to, you know, the forced labor, the slave labor that they were under. And we see how they have convinced themselves so many times. Oh, we missed the garlics and the leeks and the onions and the fish, and we ate until we were full. No, you didn't. You lie and the truth ain't in you. All right? You never got you none of that stuff. It wasn't given to you, right? You didn't. They went to bed hungry, woke up the next morning. You know, there were all kinds of things going on with them. You know, if they didn't meet their toll, you know, then they would stop up the hole in the building with one of their infants. There were so many things that were going on. You know, there was so much stuff that was happening, but they had convinced themselves of these other things. They had to, you know, and unfortunately, we can get that same way too. Sometimes we can't see beyond the end of our nose. Let's just be honest, okay? We get down in the doldrums and we have like Dad said, we party in the pit and we throw a fit, right? We get down there and we just, I'm having all this trouble. It's just me. I'm all by myself. Nobody cares. Nobody listens. Well, that's just not true. There's a whole building full of people that do care. You know what I'm saying? But you got to reach out and let us know something. You can't fix something that you don't know is broke. Amen. Had a auditor one time tell me, he said, well, you don't know what you don't know. And that's the honest truth. I live by that. If I don't know, I can't help you. And it's just like the song that we made, right? If I can't share, how will I know? Or how will you know that I really care? You got to let me, if there's a problem, you got to let me know. You know? And if I don't know, I can't pray with you. I can't try to help you see your way through it. I can't, you know, and that's the same with all of us. We can't be there to help if you don't let us know. And it's, you know, I had a very good conversation last week with a very precious sister of mine in the faith, you know. She asked me a question. She had to leave during the second part because her face was hurting. And so then she sent me a message later on that night. And she said, hey, I got a question. She said, first of all, can you tell me what this word means? And second of all, which I don't mind. If you ever have a question about a word in the scriptures, a Hebrew word, send me a message. I love that kind of stuff. I love it. So I'm more than happy to help. But she said, what in the world were the children of Israel complaining about? And, the way that the Bible, when you read it in, like in the Westminster Leningrad, when you read it in the original wording, when you read it in the Hebrew, it speaks about kind of like a pre-existing condition. They had always been accustomed to complaining, griping and murmuring and complaining, and it's just in them. And we're that way sometimes too. We can't see the forest for the trees. They had nothing to complain about, yet they complained. Here they were living being their own people, their own nation. They weren't having to serve the Egyptians. They weren't getting beaten. Their children weren't getting killed. There's all these things that they chose not to see just for the simple pleasure of being able to gripe about Moses and the wilderness. Okay? It was in them to do that, and it's in us as well. And except we change, except the old man passes away, that's that griping and murmuring and complaining one, he's got to go somewhere else because he ain't welcome in the camp. He's got to be gone, right? He don't want us to bring the old man. He wants the new man. But that new man comes alive. And if he's truly alive, he's not going to murmur and complain and gripe and grouse and all of that kind of stuff. Okay? It's just in them to do so. And they just never got it out of themselves. There was, and I honestly, there's that, you've heard of a crisis of faith. They just never had faith to begin with. And the scriptures even tell us that. They didn't have the faith to make it all the way there. For that reason, this older generation, all except for 4 people, all right, Caleb, Joshua, Ithamar, and Eleazar, they're the only 4 that made it. Not even the big 3 made it. Right? Yahweh did perform a little bit of mercy by allowing Moshe to see it. But because of the incident at the rock, he lost his temper. And that's why we got to be careful about how we handle things when, we don't want to blow it. And we can do that easily. But like I said, they didn't have anything to complain about. Nothing. For the first time in over 400 years, they had control of their own lives. You know what I mean? But they did it anyway. They complained anyway. And that's the thing. We've got to be very, very careful about murmuring about our situation, murmuring about, where are we at right now, murmuring about Yahweh's good headship, the people that he's put over us as bosses and leaders and all, we've got to be careful of that. We really, really, like I said, he's always got something going on in the background. So we need to let his plan play out. We're just bit players in it. Does that make sense? We're just pieces of the puzzle. We're just parts of the game. And we have a job to do. And that is to praise him and to glory him and honor him and to do his bidding, his will. That's what our job is. But when we go to fussing and griping and complaining about it, I can't believe that, I know this, I know that, I've read this, I've read that. How come he's up there and I'm not up there? Well, that's none of your business. That's none of your say. You know what I'm saying? So just let things go. And when you get to the point when it's time for promotion, he'll promote you. but you can't do it yourself. But like I said, here they are. For the first time in over 400 years, they had control over their own lives. And all they could do was believe the lie that they were feeding themselves. Right? Scripture said that he'll send them what? Strong delusion. And they were deluded. Wouldn't you agree, Rebbe? They were under some strong delusion. Okay. Mom, could you read verse 4, please?
And they said to each other, let us appoint a leader and let us turn back to Mitzrayim.
So this shows us exactly how bad the delusion was. Okay? Because what they were doing here, how many of us have done the same thing? They were more than willing. Okay? They were ready to stand up and march right back into the hog pen that he had brought them out of. Okay? It's like it says, and it's just like the true proverb, right? A dog has returned to his vomit again, and the sow that was washed into wallowing in the mire. Okay? How many of us have done that? Let's be honest. Okay? A lot of us, I would, with the exception of the children, I would say we've all done that. We've all looked back on Sodom and Gomorrah. We've all been like Lot's wife, right? But the grace of Yahweh and his mercy, we didn't get turned into a pillar of salt. Okay? But like I said, the sad part is they were ready just to drop everything, drop all the promises, drop everything that he had done for them, and march right back into captivity. They were more than ready to do that because of the situation they found themselves in at that moment. But I'll tell y'all, just like I've told my son, I've told other people, where you are now, you may be struggling, but where you're at now is not where you're always going to be. You may be in a dry spot right now, but you'll not be there forever. You may be in a spot where you feel far away from him, but you'll not be there forever. That's why we got to keep walking, running, walking, crawling, rolling on the ground. I don't care, but we got to make it. We got to keep moving forward. You may be moving at a snail's pace right now, but the important thing is that we keep moving forward. And one thing that we've spoken about a lot that's really brought out in this Parsha for me is the lack of gratitude. Okay? We've spoken about it over the years. We have a saying here, gratitude is the fastest drying substance known to mankind. Look at all of the things that he brought them through. All right? Were they grateful for any of it? No. Look at all the marvelous, incredible, unbelievable miracles he did. Were they grateful for any of it? No. We cannot afford to lose our sense of gratefulness. We cannot afford to become ungrateful. We cannot lose our sense of gratitude. Because once we do that, then we forget him. That gratitude is part of what ties us to him. I can remember, bless Yahweh, I can remember, and when Kim and I can't speak about anybody except for myself, me and my wife. Back on June 9th, we've been together, we've been married for 34 years. Bless Yahweh, 34 years. Been together for 38, but been married for 34. Has it always been a rose garden? A lot of thorns in it, she said. And she's right. She's right. Okay? We both had a lot of growing up to do. All right? We got married, I was 19. We had a lot of growing up to do. But we have grown. Right? Anything worth having is worth fighting for. And we have fought tooth and nail. Sometimes each other, you're absolutely right. But the thing is, I am so grateful. Had I any of it to do all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. Because what we went through is what brought us to where we are now. And I wouldn't trade anything for the walk that my wife and I have with our Father. I wouldn't give anything for the understanding that we have of the Word that we have now that we didn't have years ago. Do you see what I'm saying? I cannot afford, and neither can any of us in this building or out there on the internet, we cannot afford to lose that gratefulness. Because think about where you used to be. And think about where he's brought you from. Better yet, think about where he's taken us to. Right? We were promised. We were promised. You know, we don't even understand. The scriptures say, eye had not seen, ear has not heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man what Yahweh has prepared for them that love him. And part of loving him is doing what? Keeping his commandments. And his commandments are not grievous. And I am thankful. I, for one, am thankful for his commandments, because for so long, I was born in the church, cut my teeth on a church pew, but for so long I was so confused about everything because nothing made sense. You know what I'm saying? None of it made sense. Well, if we're Israel, my church, the church I grew up, the Pentecostal church I grew up in, was very, very strong on dispensationalism. Well, if we're Israel, how come we're not following any of the things he told Israel to do? That never made sense. Why are we here on Sunday and not Saturday? Why do we eat anything that comes down the pike? Why are we celebrating Christmas and Easter and and we're not celebrating the stuff in Leviticus 23? But none of that made any sense. But do you know, I never got any clear answers. But I put that down to being a child, right? What does it say? When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child. I did childish things. But when I became a man, what did I do? Or what should I do? Put away those childish things. You know when I count becoming a man? When I learned about how to study this word and how to decipher it for myself. That's when I became a man. Right? Because I wasn't having to have anybody take me by the hand and lead me. Now I can face to face with my Messiah. Now, not in a physical sense, but I mean, I can talk to him and know that what we're conversing or what I'm having a talk with him about, that it's the right thing. I can celebrate the feast days. I can go to his house on Shabbat and know I'm doing the right thing. It's like the first Shabbat that Kim and I ever celebrated at home. The first Erev Shabbat we ever had. Because we had nowhere to go. You know me. My wife told me, and I'll never forget it, she said, for the first time in my life, we were sitting there eating supper. We were having supper. We just opened up Shabbat, lit candles, did all the stuff. We were sitting there eating supper. It was just her and I. I don't think he was there. No, he was still young. But anyway, she says, for the first time in my life, I actually feel like I'm doing what the Father wants me to do. And those words are worth more than anything, any kind of a treasure that I could have. You know what I mean? Any kind of tangible thing. Because I felt the same way. And the trick is to not lose that sense of gratefulness, that sense of wonder, that sense of awe, that sense of reverence, you know? And that's where we started at. For a long time, Dad, you, Mom, Brother Michael, We were in our living room, weren't we? We had service in our living room for a long time. But it's kind of like what Sister Armindia was saying. Don't matter where you're at. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a big building, you know what I mean? He said where 2 or 3 are gathered, right? In my name, as touching any one thing, there I am in the midst. So we felt his presence sitting there in our living room, sitting on those couches that we had, you know, and Dad sitting at at the time we had it was like a little dining room table, right? The one that she had at 1010. We had that one sitting in our living room up against we got a big, like 9 or 12 pane window. And Dad sat at that table and he taught us from that table. Here we are sitting on the couch and on the floor and whatever, and had notebooks and was taking notes, and that was where we had service. And when Katrina came through, let me tell you what happened. About 2 days before we evacuated, I walked outside and I stood there and I looked at that house. That's all that Kim and I had. That was it. That and the car we were driving. That's all we had. And I said, Abba, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to talk to you about something. You know, sometimes the Father needs to be reminded of things too. He does. Moshe did that, right? So sometimes, the pattern's there. Sometimes he needs to be reminded. Not that he forgets, but he wants to see where we're at. I looked at that house and I said, Father, you know, this ain't much, but this is all we got. And I said, this is the only place that we have to worship you. We don't have a church building. We have this house. And this is where we serve you at. I told him, I said, I know this hurricane's coming. And I'm not asking you for a whole lot. But if you want us to have a place to serve you, spare this house. Because this is all we have. I said, I'm not asking you because it's my house. I'm asking you because this is where we serve you at. So then after that, we evacuated. We were gone for, a week? Something like that. We were gone for a week. We got back to the house. And we had a lot of trees down. We lived back in the National Forest. We had a lot of trees down. But the weird thing was, and everybody, I swear to you, Dad saw it, Mom saw it, Brother Michael saw it, Kim saw it, I saw it, Chris. The trees that we had down, they were all like, here's my house. The trees that we had down were all around the house. We had one that broke. You remember that oak tree that we had back there by that back corner where the shed is? We had an oak tree that fell. And at the time, Kim was using that kind of as a sewing room. That tree fell, broke, and broke again. It twisted away from the house in like a hook, but it fell towards the house, broke and twisted again, and it come to the corner of the house, and it was like repelled by a force field, and just twisted it out of the way. Okay, I'm not making up anything. Okay. These trees fell all around the house. We had one area in the southeast corner. There was a tree that had fallen, but there was one little old twig about as big as my pinky finger that was touching the corner of the house. And what I took that to mean was that was my confirmation. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the Ruach come to me and said, I could have taken this. And I'm going to show you. That's what that little branch was, because it was just touching. And what he told me, he was telling me, I could have taken this, but I didn't. I spared it. Yeah. And we had trees all down all over. We were cutting trees for days. But the point is, they fell around the house. And when we got home, all the cats, they were outside. Here they all come out from under the house. All the cats were there. And they were just like, hey, glad you guys are home. Can we go in? And damage to the house, between the front and the back, we lost 8 shingles off the house. That's all we lost. 8. Oh, and the power, yeah, we had a tree had fallen on the power line, and it had pulled it about that far. So I had to, but the where the masthead comes up, it came out through the eave. So it pulled through the eave, but it didn't tear out anywhere that would have gotten water in the house or anything like that. Okay? So, will I lose my gratitude for what the Father showed me? I will never, as long as I can possibly help it, I will never, ever lose my sense of gratitude for what He has done for us. Okay? It wasn't that it was my house. It was the fact that it was the house that we were using to serve Him. And that has made the biggest impact on me. And then seeing that little old branch, I kid you not, it's about as big as my pinky finger. And the very tip of it was touching the corner of the house. And that spoke to me and said, I could have taken this, but I chose not to. So I know that He answers prayer. Even things that we may think are silly at the time. I kind of thought, that was kind of silly. I hate to waste his time. But it was important because it taught me a lesson. It was a lesson that I needed. You know what I'm saying? And I'm still just as grateful, maybe even more so now than I was then. Chris, we got home. He stood in the front yard, and bless his heart, that boy wept his heart out for about 15 minutes. He just stood there and wept, sobbing. Because, like I said, the Father could have taken it away, but He didn't. So I don't think any of us can afford to lose our gratitude for what He's done. And like I said, when we hold on to that gratitude, that makes the giants seem a little more conquerable. Makes the giants seem a little smaller. Maybe they're not as, they looked a whole lot bigger when they was on the horizon, but they got, they looked a whole lot scarier than they do now. It's kind of like when, remember in Isaiah 14 where He said, is this the man? Talking about Hasatan, said that the people are going to come and look at him and say, is this the guy? This is the guy that we was afraid of? This is the one that did, yeah, exactly, sis. Ooh, he's a big scary guy, But we don't need to be afraid. We don't need to be afraid. Right? But, it's like I said, we got nothing to complain about. Yet they did anyway. And that's because they don't have their sight. They don't not keeping their eyes on the prize. All right? We can't get distracted. We can't look to the left or the right. We got to keep our eyes on Him and keep walking. And I'm going to tell you, can't none of us afford to go back to where we came from. Okay? It's like when Yahushua asked Kepha, he said, are you going to lead me too? What did Kepha say? Master, where could we go? You have the words of life. Where are we going to go? I could never go back to the church. I couldn't go to Judaism. Right? I couldn't do any of that. So where could I go? I don't want to go back to how I used to live. I was so confused. But through this word, I know how to walk and know what to do and how to, you know what I'm saying? I know how to live my life. So like I said, what we came from ain't always We don't need to go back there. He brought us from there for a reason. Okay. Mom, could you read 5-9, chapter 14, please?
And they said to each other, okay, I'm sorry.
5-9.
Then Moshe and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Yehoshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Yefunni, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their garments.
You go.
And they spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, the land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If Yahweh has delighted in us, then he shall bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Yahweh, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their defense is turned away from them, and Yahweh is with us. Do not fear them.
So you see the good counsel that they got from Caleb and from Yehoshua? They got fantastic counsel from them. But they chose to do what? To believe the doom and gloom. They chose not to see what they had been brought through. All they were seeing was what was in front of them. And they weren't looking at it with the eyes of Yahweh. They were looking at it with man's eyes. Right? Yeah, they had the bad brain. Exactly. All right? But here's the thing for us to remember. When there is bad news, when there are things that are beyond our control, because sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes things are beyond our control. When that kind of thing happens, we don't need to murmur. All right? Y'all as true believers don't murmur. You ever hear once of Moshe murmuring and complaining? I don't remember him doing that. All right? Yeshua didn't murmur and complain. Y'all as true believers, they don't murmur, they don't complain. What do? And we've seen Moses do this before. They fall on their face and they seek him. All right? And we've got to learn how to trust him at his word. Not everybody needs to put a fleece out. Ain't everybody Gideon, you know what I'm saying? But I choose to think, if he said it, I'm going to believe it, and that's good enough for me. Maybe that's foolish. But what did we read earlier? The foolishness of Yahweh is wiser than men. What's my shirt say? It says, I'm Meshuggah for Moshiach. So if I be a fool, let me be a fool for him. If I be crazy, if I be Meshuggah, Meshugos, if I be Meshuggah, then let me be crazy for him, right? Because I'm just crazy enough to believe that if he said it, that he's going to do it. That's the pattern that we see. He told him, I'm going to bring you here. Well, did he bring him? Yes, he did. He told him, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give you meat. I'm going to do this. He never once did he fail. The only time that there's ever been any failure is when we fail him. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. Don't worry about the rest of it. Let's worry about being an overcomer. Let's worry about pleasing him. And then he'll put everything in place for us to get to the position. Years ago, Rebbe taught us a lesson. And like I said, I like to think I got a pretty good hard drive up here full of good stuff that I've learned over the years. Okay? But, I get lapses in it every now and again. I go to talking about and I forget what I'm talking about. These things happen. Right? But the point is, I've got to learn how to see things from his viewpoint and look at the pattern, look at what happened. If he hasn't changed, if he did it for him 6,000 years ago, guess what? He can do it today. Amen? All right? So if he ain't changed, then we must be the ones who changed. Although I think we're pretty much the same as we always were. A bunch of stiff-necked, hard-headed, use my favorite phrase, backsliding heifers. That's what we are. But like I said, we've got to learn to be able to trust him. I mean, because there's going to be times when you're on your own and you can't reach dad or mom or me or Kim or Sister Nicole, or you may not be, you can't reach them. But you got to be able to stand on your own. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, I'm so thankful for the things that I've learned over the years, because they've given me the vision that I have now. And I can see that he's moving. And I'm not confused. And I don't feel alone. And, for the longest time, surrounded by, it was my great grandmother's church. It was my family's church. Surrounded and felt lost as a goose because I didn't have any direction. Everything was just kind of do what you're going to do. Grace, 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 grace. We didn't have an understanding of what grace was. Although it's in the book, we had no understanding. So, like I said, when it looks to be at its worst, that's when we know that Yah was working. But we got to get out of the way. Let him handle it. All right. Verse 11. It says, Yahweh said to Moses, how long is this people going to provoke me? It says, how long will it be before they believe me for all the signs which I've showed among them? I asked you earlier, and I ask you again, how many burning bushes do we need to see? How long until we believe him? Has he ever lied to us? No. Will he ever lie to us? No. Scriptures say that his word is yea and amen. That means that you can take that to the bank. You know what I'm saying? So like I said, how long is it going to be until we believe him? How long is it going to be until we trust him? Till we quit looking through the eyes of the flesh and start to see through the eyes of faith. All the things he had done so far. And they couldn't bring themselves to believe. It's so odd to me that they saw all of these miracles. Did that kind of stuff just happen every day back in the day? You know what I'm... Did this Red Sea just stand up in heaps? Oh, was that just a thing that happened? Did the plague show up just as that was just a thing? I don't get it. I don't understand that. Doesn't make sense to me. You let me see one angel, and I'd have been locked in for right then. Yeah, be not afraid. Yeah, I'm going to be afraid, especially if they look like they do in Ezekiel. That's going to freak me out. Okay, but the point is, like I said, it shouldn't get to that point. We should be able to. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of us have been preached at and preached at and preached at and preached at. And there's a lot of people out there that they're just over it because that's what they've seen. You know what I mean? But Yahweh's not real to them. He's not alive in them. His Ruach is not on the inside. So it's just another fairy tale. It's a book of allegories. Right? These are just stories so that we know how to be good citizens and stuff like that. These are the kind of things you hear in the church. Fella tried to tell my son that one time when he was about 6, 7 years old. I pulled him off the side and I said, look, I respect you. I said, but don't you ever talk to my son about the scriptures that way ever again. It is not just a bunch of stories about how to be a good citizen and you're going to get into heaven if you're a good citizen. I said, that's not the case. Scriptures tell us that these words are our life. So don't try to diminish it. And I said, don't you ever talk to my son about the Bible again. And I told him, I said, I love you and I respect you, but I'm serious as a heart attack right now. You will never talk to my son about the Bible again. And he never did, as far as I know. But I was serious. I said, these words are our life, according to what the word says. It's not just something we go to do to spend a Sunday morning. And we got that straight real quick. But then verses 12 through 19, we see where Moses intercedes on behalf of the people and Yahweh pardon him. But he's getting at his end of his rope, isn't he? Father's like, about had all I'm going to take. What did he tell Moses before? Get out of the way. He said, I'll wipe these pieces out, consume them in an instant, and I'll start all over with you. And Moses had to say, now look, Father, while I appreciate that may not be the best move. And he kind of had to do the same thing here. Did you bring him out just so that Pharaoh and them would be able to say, well, he's so weak, he couldn't even get him through the wilderness. And these will, the people around are going to see this, and it's going to bring a reproach. So, like I said, he intercedes on behalf of the people, and Yahweh pardons them. Get that? Let's take a look at verse 19.
Please forgive the wickedness of this people according to the greatness of your kindness, as you have forgiven this people from Mitzrayim even until now.
Okay. Verse 20 says, and Yahweh said, I have pardoned according to your word. So he kind of, okay, I'm going to do it. But that doesn't mean that he forgot it. Y'all see what I'm saying? He pardoned them, but he didn't say that he forgot it. Because later on he tells them, they've tempted me these 10 times out here in this desert. And I know for a fact that they tempted him way more than 10 times. That's just an idiom. That's a thematic device saying, I'm up to here with them tempting me. And what did Yahushua say? What did he tell Hasatan? Thou shalt not tempt Yahweh your Elohim. He said, I'm done with them tempting me. I'm through. I'm over it. Go Matthew 5 and 44, please.
Matthew 5, verse 44. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you.
So guess what? Their behavior was making them enemies of Yahweh. But what did it say here in Matthew? And who is this talking? This is the Moshiach talking. What's he say? He said, love your enemy. Pray for those who despitefully use you. So guess what Moses was doing? Pattern, right? Because they talked bad about him and his wife and all kinds, and they was against him. But when everything went upside down, who did they come running to? Moses and Aaron and Miriam. You know what I'm saying? But this is what we're supposed to do. I got people at my work I know hate my guts for no reason. I've done nothing to anybody. But there are people there that cannot stand me. I still pray for them. That's okay. They don't have to like me. That's all right. But I've not done anything to them. They hate me for the message that I bring. They hate me for the name that I carry. And they don't even know why they do it. Right? But the scriptures say you'll be persecuted and hated, and people are going to say all kinds of things about you. Why? For my name's sake. Okay? So that's all right. But the pattern here is right now these people are enemies of Yahweh. Yahweh's like, I'm going to take them out. But what did Moses do? He didn't preach hellfire and damnation at them, did he? Him and Aaron fell on their faces and they prayed to the Father on behalf of this people. So remember, we need to be loving our enemies too. My favorite scripture, your dad knows which one I'm talking about. It talks about pray for your enemy. If your enemy says they're hungry, feed them, right? Because what's that going to do? That's going to put burning coals on top of their heads. And I love that. I love to burn them up. Kill them with kindness. I love that. Because when you do stuff like that, it shows how much of Yahweh you have in you and how much of Hasatan they got in them. So I say, burn them up. Heap them coals on their heads. Let's read 21 through 24, please.
But truly, as I live, and all the earth is filled with the esteem of Yahweh. For none of these men who have seen my esteem and the signs which I did in Mitzrayim and in the wilderness, and have tried me now these 10 times and have disobeyed my voice, shall see the land which I swore to their fathers, nor any of those who scorned me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him, and has followed me completely, I shall bring into the land where he went, and his seed shall inherit it.
Okay. So let me tell you a secret here. And I got some scripture to back it up. But did you know Yahweh, you can say what you want to, but Yahweh will not be mocked. Go to Galatians 6 and 7.
Okay, Galatians 6 and verse 7.
Right.
Be not deceived. Elohim is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap.
So say what you want to. Just like they did in the wilderness, right? Say what you want to. Gripe and complain all you want to. Right? But Yahweh will not be mocked. Whatever you sow, that's what you're going to reap. So if you sow gratitude, you will reap gratitude. If you sow peace, you will reap peace. If you see what I'm saying? What he's saying in Matthew 5. Blessed are the peacemakers. Right? Whatever you sow is what you're going to reap. If you sow discord among the brethren, guess what you're going to reap? You're going to reap discord and chaos. Right? If you sow unbelief, that's what you're going to get more unbelief. You're going to get more stuff that is just going to get you all screwed up. Yes, sis.
So that means like if you sowing something, it's just like you sowing something in the ground like a watermelon. That means I'm gonna get a watermelon, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're going to get a bunch of them. Okay? You plant one watermelon seed, you're going to get a whole bunch of watermelon. You plant one corn, you're going to get a bunch of corns. So you're going to get it back multiplied. If I sow disbelief, guess what I'm going to reap? More disbelief and more issues like that, right? But if I sow peace and love and harmony and love between the brethren, and if I sow the love of Moshiach, guess what I'm going to reap? All of these things. You see what I'm saying? But it's going to be in abundance. Right? Some 30, some 60, some 100-fold. So if I sow the love of Moshiach, I want to get it back 100-fold. You know what I mean? So that's my thing. I'm not going to sow disbelief in him. That's not what I want. That's not what I want in my life. I want his miracles that don't change in every season, right? Evening, morning, and afternoon. These are the things I want. I want his presence in my life. So I'm not going to sow something different.
So if you sow a bad seed, that means you're going to get
You're
a
going to get
seed.
bad seed. Like what we used to say back in the day, garbage in, garbage out. You put garbage in, that's what you're going to get is garbage out. Okay. Yeah, exactly. You can't, like Kim said, you can't sow poison ivy and expect for petunias to come up. Not going to happen. Okay. But like I said, Yahweh will not be mocked. So whatever you put out there, you're going to get back. They sowed what? Murmuring, complaining, displeasure, irrational behavior, crazy thought. And what did they get back? Yeah. Slander and all that against Yahweh, against his talk about what's the word? Discord against his good headship. That's what they got back. That's why they couldn't be happy. You understand what? It's just like you put a natural seed in the ground. You know. All right. But here's the thing. We're going to be mocked. So it's your reaction to it that you're sowing. Case in point. Somebody at work says something about me because they don't understand. Well, let me ask you this. If I go over there and I just rail on that person, sometimes we want to. Let's be honest. I may want to just tear him up one side and down the other. But what has that done to my witness? Okay? So, say what you want about me. That's okay. Because they spoke bad about Yahushua, didn't they? What did they say about my master? And said that no servant is greater than his master, right? So if they done it to him, if they did it in the green tree, what are they going to do in the dry? If they talked about him and said all kind of things about him, what are they going to say about us? Okay? So we're going to experience that. It's just par for the course. Okay? But we will reap the rewards if we stay in line. We're going to reap the rewards if we stay the course. So let them say what they want. Let them get crazy and talk all kinds of. That's all right. I had a guy the other day, we were talking about something, and he's a new guy at work. He's been there about 3 months. And he said, it was just him and I in the break room. And he said, "Oh, I forgot, you're Jewish." And I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "You're not?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, everybody says you're Jewish." I said, "Well, that just proves how ignorant they are." I said, "Because I'm not." I said, being Jewish is a bloodline thing. And as far as I know, I don't have any Jewish blood in me. Nobody in my family does that I know. So I'm not a Jew. I said, however, I do follow the way of the original apostles. I eat according to the Bible. I go to church on the seventh day, not the first day of the week. I gave him he said, "Well, why would they tell me that?" I said, "Because they don't understand." I said, "They'd much rather go off with some half-baked idea that they got from someone instead of come and ask me." I told him, I said, "I'll tell you what, if you ever have any questions, come talk to me. Don't talk to nobody else." I said, "Come talk to me." And he was like, "Man, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that." I'm like, "Hey, awesome." You know what I mean? But I know who he spoke to. So what good would it do for me to go and jump all over that person? It wouldn't solve anything. It would just make the divide even wider between us. You know what I'm saying? So let them say what they want. I don't care. I ain't got to impress one person. All right? The righteous judge, that's the only one that I need to impress. The rest of it is just details. The rest is just minutia. You know what I'm saying? But I can't, through my everyday activities, I can't bring reproach on his name. You see what I'm saying? I still got to walk that line. Got to walk that line. But I'll let them say what they want to. And it says here that Caleb got in because he was of another spirit. So what was the father telling him? Caleb's going to go in because my Ruach is in him, And he ain't seeing it through the eyes of the flesh, because he's the first one that said what? We're well able to take the land. He knew it. Well able. You know what that means? Oh, that's a done deal. All we got to do is, it's turnkey, right, Dad? All we got to do is walk in and turn the key and we're good. Okay? We'll just walk in and get it. That's all we got to do. But see, that's what exactly. But that's what he said. He said, yeah, Caleb's going to get in there because he's of a different spirit. He ain't messed up like y'all. He's seen things a little different. You know what I'm saying? And then in verses 27 through 35, Yahweh explains to them what's going to happen. Because y'all are this way, ain't none of y'all going to make it out of here except for these four. And he says, and the children that you were so worried about, your little ones becoming a prey, they're the ones who's going to get to see the land. The father said, I'm done. And he was through playing with them, wasn't he? So he told him, he said, oh, here, I'm going to make you another promise. You ain't going to see it. But your little ones that you were so worried about, oh, they'll get all of it. He also explained to them one other thing. Because it was your doing that made this happen. Y'all are the ones that brought it on yourself. So this is why it's going to go down like this. And guess what? That's exactly how it went down, isn't it? 4 people out of the older generation made it. That's something else when you think about how many people were there in that group. All right, so 37 and 38 talks about the ones that brought the evil report. What happened to them? They all died by a plague. Didn't we talk about this earlier? When the people are against what Yahweh says, he always brings a plague or an enemy or something. But there's going to be a judgment against those. It's just like the ones with the golden calf. There was judgment against that 3,000, right? Just like the jealous woman, or the jealous husband, the adulterous bride. There was a judgment there if she was literal or if she was legitimately guilty. But there was a judgment as well if she wasn't, right? But he is the righteous judge. He's always going to judge correctly. And it won't be from the hearing of his ears or the side of it. It's going to be according to what's here. All right. And then in verses 40 through 45, they all have a miraculous change of heart, don't they? Oh, we're ready. Let's go take it. Moses said, don't you go. He said, because Yahweh's not going to be with you. If you go, you're going to get a tail whooping. Y'all are going to switch your leg if you go up there. And what happened? Said they got their leg. He whooped their tails. They run them all the way down to Hormah. They got him. But he told him, he said, don't go. Because he's not going to be with you now. All right? What was so bad? Because it wasn't his time. He told them earlier, you go. But they didn't do it. It's just like when he said, stand and see and look to the old path wherein is the good way. But they said what? We will not. We will not walk therein. Well, they did the same thing here. He told them, go up, take the land. Oh, we ain't going to do it. And then they decide, well, now we're ready to do it. Moses told him, he said, don't go. You're going to toe the whooping. That's a good old Mississippi phrase for you, right? You're going to toe the whooping. And they did, didn't they? They sure did. They toted one all the way down to Hormah. So, let's do things in his time. Not according to we talked about that a little bit earlier, right? We got to do things when he says. When he says go, that's the time. It's just like going to live in Israel. Now is not the time. Okay? There's going to be a time when he sends for us. And then we'll go back. But don't go back now. You ain't going to help. You ain't going to help the Israelis. All they're going to do is, all's going to happen is you're going to be a shield. A meat shield is all you're going to be. That's exactly what it is, sis. You're going to be a meat shield. That's it. All right? So now's not the time. But the scriptures tell us that when it is time, he's going to come get us. And then we'll know. Then it's the right time to go. But not before then. Chapter 15, verses 1 through 14. This talks about when you have to make an offering. This is the way you do it. If it's a bullock or a ram or a lamb or a goat, or even if you don't have an animal to say, you can use flour, but he lays down for them what is acceptable. And how many times has he already done this? How many times has he told them, this is what is acceptable? This is how you reach me. Right? So, how to perform the offerings. And when you perform the offerings and they're accepted, you need to, when you leave your sacrifice, it's called a sacrifice for what reason? Because it costs you something. And you can't get it back. Now, there were certain sacrifices that, yes, you got a portion back. But when you do a olah, what is the olah offering? That's the ascension offering, the whole burnt offering. You didn't get none of that back. What about a chatah, the sin offering? You didn't get that back. But my point is, you don't get that back. Now, Thanksgiving, peace offerings, you got some of that back. You got to actually enjoy part of that. All right? But this tells us, chapter 15 tells us, this is how you do it. Now, we don't do this today. We don't have to do this today. Okay? Because Yahushua was our eternal, spotless sacrifice. However, it still shows that there is a right way and a wrong way. There is a proper way. Yahweh has an order to what he wants and how he wants it done. Okay? You can't just bring whatever you want to and think it's going to be all right. I'm going to bring this sacrifice of a Boston butt to the tabernacle. It will not be accepted. Ask Antiochus. All right? It will not be accepted. You ain't even getting close. But like I said, and when that sacrifice is accepted, then we are to show gratitude because he accepted it, right? Okay. But take a look at verse 15 of chapter 15. Go ahead, Rebbe Tzinami.
One law is for you of the assembly and for the stranger who sojourns with you, a law forever throughout your generations. As you are, so is a stranger before Yahweh.
Okay, so there ain't one law for Israel and another law for the stranger. There ain't no Christian law. There ain't no Noahide law. All right? There ain't no Jewish law. There's one law. Now, just like I was saying before, I got a problem with the word law because the word Torah means instruction. It does not mean law. But because of the translation that was done later in the Greek, it falls under this big umbrella of words. Okay? The law, that's where people, oh, you're too legalistic. No, I'm doing what the word says. If that's legalism, then I guess that's it. But it's not, he did call it a fiery law. You know what I mean? But that's because it's what we're supposed to follow. If we break the law, where do we go? You go to jail, right? Well, if we break this word, where do we go? We go to that other place, right? We go to that hot place. But that's the thing. We're not, I prefer to think of it as instruction, guidance, right? Not as a set of rules per se, but these are the guidelines on how to live in the kingdom. So this tells me what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. Because when I make it there, I'm going to have to know what to do, right? I'm not raised under a monarchy. I'm in the United States. So I don't know how to behave in front of a king. So I have to know, and this tells me how. I've not dealt with a high priest. So I need to know what's acceptable and what is not. Do you see what I'm saying? But here's the thing. There's no Christian Torah. There's no Noahide laws. Those things are useless. They're a good starting point, but you got to have to progress beyond that. Right? You got to progress beyond that. Okay? But that's what gets me. There's one Torah. Mom, what were you told your whole life growing up? That's for the Jews. That's what they told him. Well, that's for the Jews. That's not for us. Never once did anybody have the idea, the brainstorm, oh, wait a minute. This is for Israel. And if we're Israel, then guess what we should be doing? What the Father wants us to do, right? It's really not that tough. 22 through 29, it talks about sins of ignorance. Okay? Now, there is such a thing as a sin of ignorance. People can sin and not know that they're doing it. But when we find out, what do we have to do? First of all, we got to acknowledge it. I was wrong. What did Dad say to his congregation all them years ago? I was mistaken. I was wrong. I taught you wrong. And I'm sorry. But from now on, this is what we're going to do. So you have to acknowledge it and you have to fix it. Right? And in some cases, you must make restitution. Right? And then like I said, we have to acknowledge it. We've got to confess it. We've got to acknowledge it. We got to make it right. But then verse 29 tells us again, there is one Torah. So if it's wrong for Israel to do it, it's wrong for the stranger to do it. Do you see what I'm saying? There's no second set. There was a second set of commandments made, but that's only because the first ones were destroyed. But they said the same exact thing. Isn't that what the word says? They said the same. There was no difference. It was the same words, just carved by a different hand. But it was the same exact thing. Okay? 30 through 36. Now, this is where it gets a little different. Here it talks about presumptuous sins. So in Hebrew, the word presumptuous means arrogant. So if I just do it because I want to, and I'm not afraid of what the word says, and I just do what I want. It's all about me, and I do what I want. That's presumptuous sin. Sometimes the scriptures call it willful sinning, right? So this talks about presumptuous sins and their consequences. So what's the presumptuous sin here? Do you not think that everybody knew in the camp when Shabbat was and what was acceptable and what was not? Yet we have a guy here walking around on the Shabbat and he's gathering sticks. He could have done that the whole rest of the week, the whole other first part of the week. He gives us a time of preparation, right? So why did he go and gather sticks on the Sabbath? Because he wanted to. He did what he wanted. And what happened to him? They stoned him to death. Right? As the word said, we're not supposed to do that on Shabbat. Okay? Here's one thing that I think is really great about Yahweh. He always tells them in the Tanakh, he always tells them exactly what's going to happen if they don't do what they're supposed to do. He told them, I'll bring you enemy. I'll do this. I'll bring a plague. But he always told them. You ever notice that? He always told them, I'm going to do this. And then it came true. And they still don't believe him. I can't fathom being that hard-headed. You know? But I think that the reason why he always told them what he was going to do is so that if they missed it, then it was on them. There's been plenty of times when he said, if you don't do right, then the blood is on your hands. You know what I mean? If the watchmen don't warn the people, then the blood is on his hands, right? But if he blows the alarm and they don't take heed to it, then their blood is on their own head. You see what I'm saying? So we're responsible for ourselves. Now, verses 38 through 40. Sis, I don't know if you used these when you spoke to your son, but these right here, these talk about what? Mom, go ahead and read it, because we're almost done.
Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them to make tzitzit on the corner of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue cord in the tzitzit of the corners. And it shall be to you for a tzitzit, and you shall see it, and shall remember all the commands of Yahweh, and shall do them, and not search after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you went whoring.
Okay, so now, not in the translation that mom's reading the Hallelujah scriptures. Well, I'll read it. I've got mine right here. But in the King James that most of us grew up with, right? Or the New King James, or I'm using the restored name King James. All right. It says here, speak unto the children of Israel and bid them that they make fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue. And it shall be for you a fringe. So in Hebrew, the word is tzitzit. All right, a fringe. Okay, now, if we go to Matthew chapter 9, verse 20, here it talks about a woman with an issue of blood. And she says, if I can just read, and here's Yahushua and his disciples are coming through the town, right? And there's a lot of people. Said that the press was great. They ain't talking about the guys with the newspaper. But the crowd was pressing, and it was they were just thronging him. Well, this woman had spent every dime she had. And she said, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be made whole. So she runs up and she manages to get a hold of him. And what's he say? Who touched me? He said, because I perceive virtue has flowed out of my body. Did she run? Because he knew that he had been touched. And don't you know that would have been a little scary? He said, who touched me? And she stood there flat-footed and said, I did. The scriptures say that at once, that fountain of her blood was dried up instantly. 12 years she suffered with that. Spent every dime she had. Right? And what did he tell her? He said, go your way. Your faith has made you whole. This is what I'm talking about. You remember I told you earlier? Faith is an action. She could have sat back and believed on Yahushua all she wanted to, and her issue of blood would never have dried up. But when she reached out and grabbed a hold of the gospel, what happened? That's when her healing came. We can look at Matthew 14 and 36. All right. So same book. We can look at Matthew 14 and 36. And come here, it said that there was a lot of people and that they were clamoring to grab a hold of what? The hem of his garment. When we look at that word hem in the Greek, okay? When we look at that word hem, it is the Greek word kraspedon. Kraspedon means a fringe or a tassel. We look up the word fringe in Hebrew, Strong 6734, that is the word tzitzit. So, what were they grabbing? They were grabbing these silly things that people think are underwear is coming undone. But they're there for what? So that we look at them and we are reminded that Yahweh is our Elohim. He is one. And so that we remember who we serve. So that we don't go, what? A whoring after other Elohim. That's a pretty strong word because of the connotations that it has. But that we don't sell ourselves. Because we were bought with a price, right? Ain't that what the Bible says? It says you were bought with a price. Sister Mindy, you was bought with a price. You too. We was all bought with a price. Okay? But if we whore ourselves out to those other things, we're an adulterous bride. Do you see? But I want you to see, the Messiah wore them too. So if our Messiah wore them, what should we be doing? We should be wearing them too, right? Men, if our Messiah wore them, we should be wearing them too. Okay? I'm not in on women wearing them. And the reason is because of the uncleanness every month. And if you're going to wear them, you got to wear them all the time. But you wouldn't wear them during a state of uncleanness. You see what I'm saying? To me, it's not. There's no, it's not appropriate. There's no, but for men, we're supposed to wear them, okay, every day. Sir?
Women don't go whoring, men do.
So the thing is, like I said,
Women play the whore, but men
are the ones who solicit. Okay? But again, we need to be, now there's nothing wrong with having them on your tallit or anything like that. Okay? But like I said, as to wear them, like what we're supposed to do every day, all right, I'm not behind women wearing them for that reason. All right, and then I want to draw your attention to verse 41, and this is where we're going to end at. He says, I am Yahweh your Elohim, which brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your Elohim. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Does that sound familiar? He's been telling them that an awful lot, hasn't he? But where's the first time that we see that? That is, my dear brothers and sisters, the first commandment. Isn't that what he said? That is the first commandment. I am Yahweh your Elohim that brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. So he's finishing it up with the first commandment. Don't forget where this all starts from. So like I said, regardless of our situation, regardless of what we find ourselves in, right? Regardless of the giants that are on the horizon, let's keep walking. Because the battle's not ours. It belongs to him. Amen? So like I said, let's not get the bad brain. And let's not let nostalgia lie to us. We got to keep moving forward. You know what I mean? We got to keep our eyes on the prize. Because if we get sidetracked, we're going to get off that straight and narrow. And we're going to end up somewhere where we don't need to be. Amen? I love y'all. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for being with us here today.